guys, welcome to the Hub. This is a brand new series. This is what we're going to call Murder and Mystery Hub. And this is where we will be reviewing different cases, different things, mysteries, murders, of course, to determine, kind of what's going on. And so we're just going to chat with you guys about that. So let me introduce the cast, starting just like with the circle at the bottom, with our investigator, Skylar.
What's up, guys? I'm Skylar. I'm just here for the ride. Thanks.
All right, moving over to the next contestant,
The next contestant.
April.
Come on down. Hello, all. This is April. I don't have anything funny to say because this isn't a funny show. It's very serious.
Yeah, this is my serious face. Sorry.
And on that note, I forgot to introduce myself, right? Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did forget.
So it was a mystery. That's the whole point of the show, right? So my name is Kayla, and I'm here to get to the facts.
To the what?
Facts.
Facts.
Send me the facts report.
Yes.
All right.
So
What are we investigating this week?
in this episode, this week, we actually took it back a couple of years. So in honor of not Thursday, but Wednesday, we're doing Throwback Wednesday. We took a look at the
Could
case
it be
of
way back Wednesday?
way back Wednesday. I like that one. So we took a look at the case of Ray Rivera, and specifically, most of us watched the Unsolved Mysteries. You can find that on Netflix. And that is the very first episode ever aired. It was in 2006 that this case happened, so way back Wednesday. And so Ray Rivera, the title of the show kind of was a good one, actually, to me. It was Missing on the Rooftops, right? Or Mystery on the Rooftops.
Right.
Mystery, yeah.
Yeah. So it starts out, and honestly, this case is just so all over the place that I think it's hard to stick to just that episode. So as we go through the episode today, we're going to talk about a couple of things. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of send our source links over to our Ashley, who will be on the next episode, and kind of post those down below for you guys. But we're going to talk about all of the research. So this one took a lot of investigating, don't you guys think?
Yeah. I didn't do very much, but I'm hearing y'all did.
Honestly, as you'll see growing out through the episode, a quick 5-minute Google search brings up probably about 15 different pages, and they all kind of say the same thing, and they kind of just point around the exact same thing, which you'll learn throughout the episode. But I mean, it did take going through multiple different web pages just to kind of untwist the story that Netflix told.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that, kinda. However, and we'll talk about this later on, there's a lot of different theories that go into this, and a lot of it has some things that were believable, and some things are just like, okay, guys, calm down. So let's just start with the episode. So it starts off with like a fairy tale, right? It's like awesome wedding, and what was it, Puerto Rico, so they're just like, yeah, so it's just an amazing wedding. They look beautiful. To Skylar's point, I think you mentioned it before, kind of older footage, of course, because we started with the very first episode.
Yeah.
So it starts off talking about the wedding and how happy they were and all that good stuff. What did you guys think about that and how they kind of started to portray Ray as a person?
Well, I mean, you don't want to speak ill of the dead either way. So I think they did it in a way where he's a good guy, and not a family man, because they didn't have a family, but a good husband and a good brother, a good son. I liked how they described him at the beginning, 6'5", 260, athletic, funny. I think the description was a good, I don't know why. I just thought that was good to know. Because you can see pictures. To me, he didn't look 6'5" in the pictures.
Mm.
So I think it was good to visualize what you could see.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of like body shots, I feel like, of him. It was mostly just kind of his face and like upper torso,
Yeah.
except during the video with the wedding.
Yeah.
So I asked that because in a lot of the different websites that I went through and looked about this case, a lot of it portrayed him as being, like mentally ill in some way, right? So in like the videos when they started, I mean, of course, totally get your point. You don't want to, talk ill of, the dead, but at the same time, I mean, when you're doing a documentary about, hey, what happened, they didn't really kind of mention any of that in there. So I was
Well, I mean, to that point though, when somebody that you love, a family member, potentially, I mean, either commit suicide or has been killed themselves, at no point do you want to bring any negativity to that person, right? And so that you show in the show, they interviewed the family members first, of course. So the
right.
family members are going to give you every positive thing about this person, every happy moment they shared. They're not going to, and in any mystery murder show that I've ever watched, they've never immediately came out and said, well, this person did have a mental illness. They did suffer from depression, blah, blah, blah. They always throw out the very positives first. So I think they just kind of wanted everyone to see this person as a human being.
Mhm.
And of course, the show's called Unsolved Mysteries. So they wanted to portray this person as a positive, happy, family person, family oriented man. And then bam, a tragedy hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. But I don't think like throughout the entire episode, I don't think they mentioned it at all. It didn't
No,
even portray it at all throughout the entire episode. So
No.
that was kind of weird to me. But
but
it did kind of connect the dots,
yeah,
to what was going on.
yeah. Keep in mind also when the show was filmed, when they filmed all of these interviews, mental illness was still a kind of in the dark. You don't talk about having mental illness. You don't, you're not very talkative about it in general. So that
It's
could have
still
been a
that way,
huge
and
factor.
it's still
Yeah.
that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, people are so afraid to talk about mental illness. So I mean, that's a huge factor in how they wanted to portray the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree there. Totally agree. So like, it kind of makes sense as to why Allison wouldn't mention that, in the very beginning when they were filming this, because it was even still this episode was quite a while back. So yeah, totally agree. And I just want to take a second to mention, like in this case specifically, if things were in society, and I don't want to get too deep, if things were in society, like if people felt more comfortable to talk about things like this, then we wouldn't have so many unsolved mysteries, I feel like.
Right.
Because I mean, like people would have better insight. So
Well,
hashtag
take us back to the beginning of what happened in this case.
Yeah, so the very beginning we left off at the wedding, right? So I feel like it kind of quickly jumped to them living in Baltimore and Allison going on this trip. It didn't talk about the fact that she was going on a work trip, so I want to make sure to mention that. I mean, it did, but it didn't kind of go into that. With Allison, Allison, she traveled a lot for work, so that was a part of her job was traveling quite often. So it wasn't, uncommon at all. So just kind of throwing that out there for you guys to keep in mind. So Allison goes on this work trip, and she gets done traveling. I don't know if you guys I know you guys have traveled, right? So that's like an entire day in itself. So she gets done traveling and she gets to her hotel and she's gonna check in and see, hey, what's going on at home, and calls and she speaks to Claudia. What do you guys think about that?
Who is Claudia? They mentioned her twice in the whole show. At the beginning, we have a house guest, she's a colleague, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, at some point, they mentioned her. In bold letters on my notes, who's Claudia?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a theory in itself that was not mentioned in the whole show.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
because I mean, in the show, it even says, unfortunately, I mean, I don't think we've gotten to that point, but Claudia's there. She talks to Allison, and then as soon as they figure out something's wrong, Claudia's gone. Like I'm
exactly.
out. I'm going to
She
New York,
left.
leave me alone. I'm out. And in fact, when I was watching the show, that was one of like out loud. I was like, all your friends are coming down to help, but she's just disappeared.
Exactly, exactly. Tell us about her. I mean, is she a 98-year-old woman or is
Yeah.
she a 27-year-old blonde, blue-eyed, you know?
Who
Yeah.
is she? So I did not find pictures, but I will say, to your guys' point, in all of the research, and I have my handy dandy laptop, I can scroll through, I think it's like 10 pages that I have, here down. In all of the research I did, Claudia was mentioned just in that exact form.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one source, and we'll post it, that I was able to find that did let us know that Claudia actually was originally a friend of Ray's. So Ray met Claudia. I can't remember. I'll have to go check the source. I have it here actually. I don't know why I'm having to go check it. But she was originally Ray's friend. Well, then because Allison traveled so much, and then Claudia was also traveling quite often, her and Allison became very close. And so in the source that I have, it actually quoted them as being best friends. So, which is kind of also odd to me, because if you're best friends, then why are you not there helping them try to figure out where Ray is?
Yeah.
Especially if you're the last person he talked to.
Yeah, so
So
that's a whole different theory when we get to our theories that I have. I mean, that's where my mind just goes. It's like, who is this chick?
well, and I also want to make sure to mention in the sources that we have that it mentioned that Claudia said, or that Allison says Claudia has drama of her own. So it didn't not go into detail at all about what this drama is, but definitely there's some thoughts there.
Yeah.
Well, can we actually backtrack just a little bit before Claudia? The entire reason why they're in Baltimore,
Oh yeah.
um,
The Peter
Porter Stansberry.
Stansberry friend. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes. So there's a lot there. There's a lot. So in the Netflix episode, I just want to get your thoughts. Who do you guys think Porter is based off the show? Who is Porter to Ray? Do you guys think?
Which I think if you're basing it off what the show wants to say, is the show's portraying that this to be his best friend, his number one. This is my main man right here. Um, and that's what I think the show tries to portray. But after all of my research, I mean, that's not true. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm looking at more research over Claudia because y'all kept talking, and I was like, well, hold on.
Claudia,
Anyway,
what does she look like?
Even
Is she
if
pretty?
they were just friends from college, either acquaintance, they did play on the same, what was it, water polo,
water polo, yeah.
yeah,
Which
team.
I
You know,
understand having a friendship where, oh, I want to be close to this person. Like, if I had the choice and, my best friend wasn't my mom, I would probably want to live right next to my best friend as well, whatever. But
well, now let's back up. They lived in California.
mhm,
He was a screenwriter.
yeah,
Yes.
If you don't make it big, you're not bringing in money.
true, which is the whole reason because he moved out there to work for Porter, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
So,
I can just hear that conversation. Hey, dude, I need a job. Don't tell my wife I'm begging you for a job.
yeah,
Let's just
Yeah.
give me a job. We'll move out there.
Yeah.
right.
The way they portrayed it is he was begging Ray to.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Exactly.
don't know.
Yeah, and just to kind of also throw another note out there, Porter and Ray were also actually in the exact same fraternity as well. So they played
Hmm.
on the same polo team. They were on the same swimming team. They were also in the same fraternity. And so they've known each other since they were, I think it was like 15 years old is what they said. So yeah, they portray it as they're very, very, very good friends.
Hmm. Yeah. So Porter, he owned a financial like newspaper basically
Mhm.
that he wanted Ray to write for, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure we stay on the timeline that I have. Not timeline, the whatever.
Yeah. So they moved to Baltimore to go work with Porter. And the reason why is because Porter actually he was being investigated for fraud. And so Ray was moving out there essentially to help them out and help kind of get them back on track with writing. So what they did is they kind of helped, give people advice on where to put their stocks, where to invest. So on that note, and in my research, I found that Ray actually moved out to Baltimore 90 days before Allison moved out to Baltimore.
Yes.
Did you guys find that as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting because it gives Ray a lot of time to kind of get to know the people there and kind of get into his own things. And then I don't know about you guys, but when my husband's not home or when I'm out of town, I'm like, well, let me see what's cool to do. Let me just go kind of check out the town and see what's going on. So I'm sure it gave him plenty of time to do that as well. So they move out to Baltimore. They say, hey, we're only going to stay 2 years. We're going to give it 2 years. If things don't work out, we're going back to LA. So they're there for 2 years. And what do you guys think about their house? In the Netflix episode, they showed like the aerial view of the house. I don't know.
So, strangely enough, I was able to find a website that had their floor plan. I'm obsessed with houses right now. I'm trying to move myself.
Investigator Skylar.
Right. So they had a 4-bedroom house in, so I mean, it's going to be rather large, over 1,600 square feet. So it's a rather large home itself. But
it's really not.
My house is 900 square feet. So that is rather large.
I'm just saying a 4-bedroom for 1,600 to 1,700 square feet. I live in a 3-bedroom, 1,600 square foot. It's not that big.
So the house,
comparing it to what it showed,
yes,
what it portrayed to be, maybe it was bigger than 1,600. I don't know.
Right. No, yes, but to me, like back in 2006, a 4-bedroom house, large square footage is large to me,
Yeah.
But
it is large. I'm just saying in perspective.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that leads to extra questions of, if we knew he wasn't doing financially well in California and he moved to Baltimore to write for his friend's newspaper or whatever, I mean, this leads me to ask even more questions about, like, was he in financial trouble? Was he trying to show that he had more money than he actually had? Stuff like that. So his house was strange to me.
Well, we don't know what she did for a living.
True.
They could have had money.
Yeah. Side note, that house was $280,000 in 2006.
And when I say they, I mean Porter's company may have paid. Did they buy the house? Were they renting the house?
So I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because later when we get into like all the different theories, one of the theories actually portray Porter's business that he actually, it was an umbrella of, so Agora portrayed them as like owing money. And so it's kind of interesting, and we'll get into that later. But so they moved to Baltimore, right? They're in this extravagant house, $280,000, 4-bedroom. It looks pretty good. They're there, I believe it was for 6 months, right? So they're there for 6 months. And Ray's writing for Porter's company and kind of helping them out with the advice column. Well, on the side, Ray's actually a writer, in his own sense. He wants to have his own productions going on. So actually at the company, he was doing the writing, but then he kind of also helped out with things like producing things, kind of helping out there too. So he was doing some kind of side contracting gigs, at around that same time. So in my notes, I have that in there because he had his side company. It's called Sieba. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Video production. So he was doing that kind of on his own, and
she's gone.
Yeah, she left. Hey, I found Ashley though.
Hi.
Yeah, he traded out Michaela for Ashley.
That's weird. That's definitely weird.
No, it'd been really cool if I knew where she was going, so I could just keep going with it. That would have been really neat.
Yeah, no. We were talking about Ray's what he did for a living and how what else he did outside of working for Porter Stansberry.
Oh, internet went out. So yeah, he had side gigs, and
Which for a screenwriter is not uncommon. I mean, when you're
Right.
trying to make it in a certain business, like, you know, like me, I have my main job, and then when you're trying to make it in a certain business, you're gonna have side gigs. That's just how it is. It's not necessarily uncommon.
that's true. That's true. I mean, we all have something that we would rather be doing than our main gig, you know.
Exactly. So to go along with, I think she was just telling us about the timeline about what he was doing and stuff. So they move in, they moved to Baltimore, of course, and Ray's working for Porter. And it was just they were having in the show it's portrayed they're having the time of their life. They're loving their new life there. They're loving their new house. And then Allison, she has to go on a trip. And in the show, it was like a real quick, I just had to go on a trip real quick. And it didn't really go into an extent of why she had to or where she was going.
It was just a business trip.
Yeah, so she says that she went on this trip, and after traveling, she gets to her hotel room at 6:30 p.m. or roughly approximately 6:30 p.m. And so she calls just to check in, and she does not hear from Ray. Ray does not answer, which I guess was some welcome back, Kayla. Good job.
it's a mystery.
Yeah, good job. Good job.
So she calls her husband. He doesn't answer.
Yeah.
So I guess she calls the house phone, because I'm assuming she called his cell phone.
Right.
And back in 2006.
So that's the question,
hold on.
right? Because she got Claudia, not Ray.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Ray and he didn't answer, so she called Claudia. Never mind.
Right, no, but that's the thing. They looked at call records. She did not call Ray's cell phone. So what I'm assuming happened is she called the house phone and it didn't get answered. She called again and the house guest answered it. Because they looked at his cell phone records, and nowhere in any red page that I have read after fact was there a record that she called his cell phone, because the only record they had was that he had an inbound call from Stansberry, not himself, his company, Stansberry. So I'm thinking that she called the house phone, he didn't answer, she called again, and then finally the house guest was just like, oh, I'm gonna answer it.
So interesting that you mentioned that. So that's what go ahead. Oh, I think I have like some feedback. Sorry, guys. So that's what the episode says, right? But in further research, it actually shows that the last phone call received by Ray originated in Fells Point. So that was in not from Stansberry switchboard.
You do have a feedback coming from your thing.
Yeah, I heard that. So the question then is, on the episode they say, hey, this is the last call, with Stansberry and Associates, but it actually came from Fells Point. So I mean, who's to say that she didn't really call his cell phone, and then call Claudia? But yeah,
but in my research I found that there was actually another call from somebody wanting his laptop. So
to the police. Yeah. So and that was kind of weird too, right? So and all of the things to ask for, people are calling looking for his computer. That was kind of weird too, and that kind of alludes to a couple of different theories that we'll definitely talk about later. So yeah, so the call comes in, Claudia answers. Claudia says, "Hey, Ray got a phone call. He just said, oh shit," and ran out the door in a hurry, and flip flops, by the way.
So he grabbed his phone, he was wearing glasses, he put on his flip-flops, and he left.
Right.
Yep.
Left his Invisalign. That was like the number one thing in all of the research that everybody pointed out. Left the Invisalign, left a full bag of potato chips, and left a half-drank can of grapefruit soda, right?
Yeah.
But I do want to point out the very strange behavior of that house guest, Claudia, right? So, but why is she leaving every light on? So she leaves after they realize he's missing, right? She leaves after. She left every light on. She left the bag of chips just open on the counter. Like, you're going to let them go sell, whether that man is missing or not. Like,
if
wants to
let him know, like, hey man, you left your Invisalign. Don't know if
like,
you know.
If I'm staying at your house, Kayla, and I see that you left your chips open, I'm gonna be considerate. I'm closing those for you.
I'm gonna be considerate. I'm gonna eat them for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
I'm gonna turn lights off. Like like when Claudia left, she left everything the way as if it was like, oh, he just went missing. Like that to me was strange behavior. I'm sorry.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey.
Welcome in.
You've been here.
So then Claudia leaves, and Allison gets home, or Allison gets home and then Claudia leaves. Either way, Allison starts making phone calls. Calls his relatives, calls their friends. No one's heard from him. And then his brother flies in from Florida, I think he said he lived. Maybe.
I don't remember where the brother came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it mentioned really.
Yeah.
And they started researching on finding him, walking the streets. Have you seen this man? Have you, where, I guess going to restaurants or wherever he would hang out.
Wanted posters or missing posters.
And I just mentioned that this brother is like the best ever, because it was May 16th that Allison calls Claudia and realizes that Ray left. And then May 17th is when Allison's like, oh, he didn't come home last night. I'm coming home. And then like, just like that, his brother was on a plane to come in, help try to find him. So I thought that was really cool too.
Well, I hope siblings would do that.
Yeah.
So while we're on that part of how the whole family came together the moment they realized this man was missing, in the show, I think what troubled me so much in the show was that in the show they portrayed this man as one of the happiest people they ever met. He doesn't really ever disappear, right? So just for instance, right, if I'm the happiest person you ever met and then I went missing, are you about to call every 17 members of our family and get together in a rally of me missing for 4 hours? And like if they didn't think, oh, maybe he is depressed or maybe he has something going on, he's been acting strange, then why did they jump to we have to search the entire city for him? You know what I mean?
I didn't think about that, but that's a good
yeah.
Like maybe he just went out and he his phone died and he's just having the time of his life because he's happy. Or do you know that he's depressed and he could be having a break and now you're worried? You know what I mean? Like that's what kind of threw me off.
That's a good point, because we're on each other if we don't hear from each other for a few hours. If you didn't respond and it's been 2 hours, are you okay? What's going on?
Right. Right.
But after 4 hours and you don't answer, are we calling search parties?
I mean, kinda.
I mean, nowadays it's a lot different because now we have like Facebook and, my wife has my location on my phone and, like she don't find me. She don't need the cops.
So in
But
the olden days in 2006,
but back in 2006, we didn't have that, right? In 2006, if I went missing for 4 hours, and I was having a mental break, then yeah, you're going to call the cops and you're going to be like, hey, this person's probably in trouble. Or, oh no, he's happy, he's good. Let's wait till tomorrow,
Yeah.
Like, I felt like they jumped really fast for portraying him so happy in the episode.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's a good point. Good point. I think
Yeah, which
Skylar
kind of
should get a
goes back
point
to
for
what
that.
we were saying, or what you were saying, back in the day, it wasn't as okay to not be okay, And so
Right.
I think it's very important for everybody to remember, especially with this episode, it's okay not to be okay. It happens. Let somebody know, and that way they can help you. And then if in the case that you're out, just hitting up the town because you're having a bad day, they know, hey, they're just on the town. They're not, jumping off a roof. So
Speaking of jumping off roofs,
yeah.
Foreshadowing.
Speaking of that,
Foreshadowing.
so in the episode, Claudia leaves, right? They're doing the search party. They have done posters. They're out looking everywhere. They're scouring everywhere. And I think it was Allison's parents, right?
yeah.
Allison's parents
Yes.
are out driving around, and they just get the thought, hey, let's just go drive around and check, different parking areas, And so they pull into a parking area, and just by chance, they make sure to mention that through Allison's father, her mother sees Allison's car, or Ray's car, parked in the parking garage. So
I have a comment about that.
Yeah.
They say that it was parked near this hotel, but it was also parked near his job. So
Yes.
that's a good area for him to be in. I mean, it's not any place he wouldn't have normally been in.
Mhm.
How come they waited 6 days
To check their job, to check his job.
to check around his job? Why? I just didn't understand that.
Yeah, it was interesting that they came together so quickly, but then, it took so long because I think it was like 6 days in between checking, right? So, also just to know that the reason, maybe a big part of the reason why this is still kind of unsolved is everything was in such close vicinity. There's no telling why he was in that area. He could have, just walked from his job. He could have gone to look at the sunset on the roof. And something that they didn't mention in the episode as much, but that in my research I found, is that he actually spent a couple of visits at the hotel before. He checked out the hotel. Him and Allison were actually at the hotel at one point, and they had some drinks and were hanging out there. So it wasn't uncommon for him to be just in that area in a whole. So, but yeah, so they find his car 6 days later, right?
Right.
So, after
And
finding
there's
the
nothing
car,
in his car. There's nothing in his car.
which
So
is interesting, right?
What?
That's interesting, right? Like, so they take his car and there's nothing at all.
Well, nothing worth mentioning. Like he went there and parked, grabbed his phone, grabbed his keys, grabbed his wallet, whatever, and left. Like got out of the car and left. Like a normal, like if you were going somewhere, that's what you would do.
Yeah, but so I found that interesting because in the research that we did, it showed that he booked a editing suite, right? So he was going to do some video editing. He was out doing some research. So you wouldn't take like a camera, you wouldn't take anything else with you to do that. So I thought it was weird that he didn't really take anything but, his minimal items,
Right.
especially after saying, "Oh shit," and running out the door, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so in the episode, they show he says, "Oh shit," he runs out the door. They find his car about 6 days later, and then 3 coworkers just meet up. Coincidentally, they just meet up. There's actually 2 of them. So George and Steven were out. They met a different coworker out there and was like, "Hey, let's just walk up this parking garage." Right? So they get to the very top of the parking garage and they're like, "Hey, let's just look over the ledge and look at the roof." Did anybody else find that odd?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
where you guys would check? Is like instantly just look off at the roof?
Well, I can see like detectives doing that because they want to scour the whole. Okay, and maybe they just do that on TV. Maybe they don't do that in real life. I don't know. But they would want to scour the whole area, go up the elevator or the parking garage to the roof, look around, whatever. Normal people doing that, I wouldn't think of doing that, but
Well, so I mean, I find it strange, yes and no. Yes, because I mean, like, if you say it in a matter of they were on the hunt for his body and they went straight to this point and looked over this ledge and did it, but then like I know how I am with some of my coworkers, and sometimes we just walk and we're like, oh, wouldn't it be weird if this was what happened, like spectating ourselves and just talking to each other, and then you get to the ledge and you're like, whoa, like there's something here, at that point,
but
like,
they weren't
was it?
looking for a body at that time. They didn't know.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, if I'm with my coworkers and we're just walking around, we're just gonna walk around, and if we find something, we find something. I think it was just a coincidence the way they said it on the show.
Okay.
Whereas it was more or less like it could have just been them hanging out. Like, I would want to go sit on the ledge and smoke a cigarette or do this or whatever. And if you look at the way the building was to the ledge of the parking garage, it was like almost like identical in height. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like they had to look over super far. They just look over the edge and they see a hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was 20 feet, and actually it shows that they saw the flip flop first. So
Yeah, the
somebody was
flip flop.
just
I'm
kind of
sorry, not the hole.
hanging
The flip
out,
flop.
they looked over the ledge, they noticed the large flip flop, and they were like, "What the heck? Because why is this on the roof?" And that, to me, honestly, if I looked over the ledge and I saw a flip flop, I'd be like, "What the heck?" And the hole was only 40 inches
Yeah,
across in diameter. It
yeah,
wasn't like a big, hole for them to notice. So they noticed the flip flops. Also on the roof are his glasses, our raised glasses, his phone, and of course, just the flip flops. So, of course, they call the detective over. The detective comes over and they are like, well, what the heck is under this hole that's in the roof? So they go inside and they talk to the manager. And in the Netflix episode, it shows the manager, right? What did you guys think about him?
I mean, he's not really like, I don't know how to explain it, but you could see that it affected him. I
Yeah.
mean, the thought of
Yeah.
having to talk about it, you could see the distraught over his face. He talks about how he was with that company for 30 years,
Yep.
and that's going to be the one thing that he remembers. That is,
And what did he start out as? Like he started on the bottom.
yeah, he was like a bellhop or something, and he worked
And
his way up. And so in
for
30 years,
30 years, and then you find a body. I mean, that's gonna stick. And he seemed really sincere.
yeah,
Like everybody else is in on it. Like, I'm not saying this, but I'm just saying, like, everybody else is in on something, and he's just like, this just,
Yeah.
So.
yeah. He was then, I think he had the case of wrong place, wrong time. Because it could have been anybody else who had to open that door, and that's his only connection to the case, was that he was the guy who opened the door.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what haunts him. So, and you can definitely feel that from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely. So I thought the exact same thing as you guys. At the same time thinking, he also grew to be the property manager of that hotel. And so he, I think in his case for sure, going through different measures to make sure people don't have access to the roof. Because one thing that they do mention in the Netflix series here is that it kind of seemed impossible, or they made it seem impossible, that Ray would get to the roof of this hotel, right? So they kind of showed, you go through the back door, you have like you have like a Skylar's face got frozen like right here, like skeptical. So they talked about how so they found his body. So let's back up a little bit. They found his body, right? He's into a church area but it hadn't been used in a while because this church found another location. So not too many people were going in and out of this room. However, there was I believe a restaurant or something right next door. And there was a couple of complaints from the employees that worked in that room of a smell coming from the next room. So I thought it was weird that it never got checked out. Also, just a side note, that area that he fell into, it used to be a swimming pool. So the swimming pool had been filled in, and then they made it into 2 different meeting rooms. So, which I don't know if there's a connection to that. There's a theory that has that in there, but
So, what was I going to say? You had to know how to get to the roof.
Well, so
Or through to, it wasn't a straight shot, I guess.
Well, so there's actually in an interview that I read with the Baltimore Sun, there's a lady who actually wrote a book about this case in 2018. She wrote a book over the Ray Rivera case, and she claims that she went through the steps. She wanted to see how hard it would be to get to the roof herself, and from her, I mean, she straight up says like it was actually quite easy. Like there was no back stairwell she had to take. There was no room she had to go through. It was actually quite easy for her to get to the roof, especially because there's been record of the employees at that establishment taking their smoke breaks on the roof. So they would leave the door cracked open with like a piece of wood or a piece of metal, so that way they could easily get back in because it was an exit only door. So she said that she was able to get on the roof with really no problem. So I mean, if somebody could just walk in and get to the roof with no problem, I don't like how the show tried to make it seem like, oh, it was impossible unless he had an inside guy and knew somebody, and he had to go back here and go employee entrance. Obviously not. I mean,
yeah.
There was ways to get there.
And are you talking about the book by Makita? Is that Makita that you're thinking about?
The 2018 book?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? That was written by Brotman.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because in the episode it talks about how Ray's brother Angel also did the same thing. He tried to go up to the roof, and in the episode they, like you said, made it seem like it was virtually impossible. So Angel was like, there's no way that he got up to the roof. There's no way. But it was also mentioned, and there's another book that's also written. Her name is Makita, and she lives on the 5th floor, east facing to where Ray would have fell. And she also mentions how it is very easy and how it was quite common to look over and see people smoking up there, because the bartenders would just go and do that. They would just go smoke there on that ledge. So it's not impossible that he made his way up there. And there's actually some other people that have mentioned that Allison and Ray actually spent the sunset up there on the roof of the Belvedere and watched the sunset.
Sure.
So yeah, but I do like how in the episode, while they were talking about how it was virtually impossible, I like how they kind of showed all of the different dimensions. So they were like, oh, it's a 20-foot drop from the garage to the roof. Oh, it's a 40-foot drop, or it's a 40-foot, So that helped out a lot, because it's like, did he run and jump off this roof? Really?
Well, so if you do the physics math, I like physics, I like science. So if you're doing the math, he's a 6'5" guy, weighs 260 pounds, right? So it wouldn't be virtually impossible for that to be happening. He would just have to be running at a.
You have to throw it in there that he was athletic 260-pound guy.
Athletic,
he wasn't an overweight 260-pound guy.
Right. He was a swimmer.
Right. So if you do the math, and you can't see my screen, but the math's on there. So he would have to be running at between like 11 and 13 miles per hour, which is not uncommon for an athletic man to be able to run in a short distance, like not long term, but a short distance. He'd be able to run, between that. That's not uncommon. But you then have to think about the fact that if you're looking at the aerial view of the roof, there's air ducts, there's vents, there wouldn't be a straight shot. So the theory that he could have ran and jumped off, yes, he could have, essentially, if he jumped over and it was, fight or flight defense, whatever. But to me, that just did not seem a very good theory, because, you can't get to 13 miles an hour unless you're going really a straight shot.
Okay, but I'm sure, and we don't know, if he was committing suicide and running and jumping, I'm sure his goal in his mind was not to go through the roof of the thing below him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the goal in his mind was probably, wasn't there an in-between spot between the roof and where he was found? Wasn't there an in-between?
Yeah, it was about a 40-foot distance as well. So the roof itself was about 40 foot, and it was like double that to where he was, the hole in the roof. Yeah. So, and then kind of going back to that. So going back to the theory that he ran and jumped off the roof, right? Let's talk about how they found his body. So his body was in one of the rooms, the church room, and it was found face up, wedged up against the wall. And in the toxicology reports, it shows injuries to only, I believe, the left side of his body. On the bottom half, it shows injuries to his head. It shows injuries to his neck. It shows injuries to his tibia. But it doesn't show any injuries to like his foot, like his like the whole bottom half of him. To me, and I'm not an expert, I'm not even claimed to be, but to me, if somebody's jumping, at that speed and at that distance and going through a metal roof, I feel like there would be so much more happening on that lower half than only on the one side of the body. What do you guys think about that?
Well, we have to look at the way he went through the roof. If you're pushed or you just fall, you're going like this. Like this. To me, it looked like with the hole, he went like this.
Right.
Like dive, like a diver, instead of he went.
So you think he went head first, maybe?
I'm not either way, head or, but I don't think he went body
horizontal. You think he went you think he went vertically through the hole, right?
I think the way the hole was, because the guy was 6'5".
Yeah, it would have been a huge hole. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if he jumping from himself, he's running. And like I said, I really don't think going through the roof was his goal. I think hitting the ground was his goal if he committed suicide. He's running, dives, hits. He may have, once he went through, he may not have died on impact. He may have tried to get up, whatever, but you're not found for 8 days or whatever. You're going to die,
Right. Yeah. And even the medical examiner's autopsy report, it still, in the end, said that his injuries were consistent with suicide. They'd only ruled it undetermined because they couldn't, based off the trajectory and everything else, determine exactly how he went, if it was suicide. But they still say the injuries are. And, one thing that in my theory, just in my own, and I'm not an expert, I feel like there was definitely some other injuries that happened maybe beforehand, and then it led up. So I feel like there's so much more that we will not ever know, because we're not involved. But there's so much more that goes into that, and it's very likely that he did jump off the roof. But there's some other injuries that are kind of like, what? So they find his body, right? He's been there for 8 days, very decomposed. Allison brings in a private investigator because at this point the police department's ruling it a suicide. So she brings in a private investigator. The private investigator comes in, tries to get footage, of that night, and the footage is missing for that entire day. And, ironically enough, the camera was unplugged that was on the rooftop. which to me, at first, I feel like definitely you would think it was weird that unusual. But if the staff is going up there and smoking, on their break instead of having to go all the way downstairs, wouldn't you unplug the camera instead of being caught? So that kind of makes sense that the camera wasn't working at that time. But what doesn't make sense is they said they questioned everybody there, right? And nobody remembered seeing Ray go up or even be there that night. So and even in the research, still nobody has come out to this day to say, hey, I seen Ray here this night,
Well, in reality, if they've frequented the place themselves, him and Allison, and maybe he's went there a few times by himself, if you're a bartender or a bellhop or a maid or something, if you see this guy there once a week, it's just like, maybe he was here, maybe he wasn't, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like he was someone new that you would be like, I did see a strange man here.
Right.
Eventually people just fade in and out.
Yeah. If they don't leave an imprint, you don't really remember them.
Yeah. So he could have just went in, nobody paid attention, he did his thing or whatever,
Yeah. So after that, in the episode, it talks about how she hires a private investigator. That kind of goes nowhere. I do want to make sure to point out that Allison talks about Ray having a fear of heights. And then in later research, Maria, his mother, talks about him having even a fear of death, which kind of alludes more to a psychotic break, because when you're going through something like that, you don't stop and think about, oh, I'm scared of this,
I think my thing is of course, if you only watch the show, then yes, you're getting the only one side of the story. But on multiple interviews and web pages that I found, he's been to the rooftop 3 times since he himself has been in Baltimore. So that doesn't show that you have a fear of heights, though. Like, to me, like, I have a fear of heights. I'm not going to the rooftop. You want to see the sunset? We're gonna go to the park and watch it from the car. I'm not gonna walk up to a rooftop just so you can have a beautiful view if I am deathly scared of heights. So I think that she was playing, not saying that she's playing, not saying that it's not true, but she's playing the grieving widow very well in that point.
And trying to protect his character, like
Exactly.
she didn't at that time want him to come out and be like, a mentally ill person. So definitely feel that. So that happens, right? And then so they're back. It cuts to kind of Angel and Allison talking about finding a note taped to the back of Ray's computer, right? Well, before that, they make sure to mention that there was a gag order placed on the Stansbury and Associate employees, which
Did
I thought.
Anybody find that strange? The day of, they're called into the office, whatever. You cannot talk about this. You cannot talk about him, what he did for the company.
I'm going to be honest. When you first say that, yes, like, that sounds strange. But then I got to thinking, like, my own company that I work for, if something big happened, my boss is going to say, hey, you can't talk to the media. They're going to send out a memo, and they're going to say no employees can talk to the media. Please direct them to the corporate office.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that, working for a trucking company, I should have thought of that, because anytime we had a wreck,
you can't talk about it.
We cannot talk about it.
Well, because at that point, that thing is under investigation, right? They're going to immediately start looking into things. And so, and at the same time, Porter was dealing with his own legal things going on with the whole fraud thing. I'm sure immediately they were like, they had also just hired a new publicist. So I'm sure that they were on top of, let's not do anything at all, that could do anything to detrimental.
When I was watching the show, the way I took it was they weren't even talking to the police.
So, and that is actually, even in the research, is that Porter stopped talking to the police even as soon as they found his body, which there is a theory out there, just a theory, that so Porter has a production, it's called The Game. and it's if you have time, you can go and watch it. I have not watched it, but essentially in the game, it's all about messing with somebody to see how long they can kind of stay in this game, and playing, teaming up with people, allies, very much like a reality show. So with that being said, with the note that they find on the back of Ray's computer, he has a bunch of ramblings, right? And in these ramblings, he's talking about, oh, thank you guys for joining the game. He's talking about the Freemasons brought up in it. He's talking about a lot of things. So one thing Allison mentions in the show is that it was weird that he typed it up rather than writing it. But it wasn't weird that it was ramblings, because he did that often. What do you guys think about the fact that it was typed up and taped to the back of his computer and like a protective bag?
Well, I think if he's a screenwriter or any kind of writer at that point, you're going to be typing, it's I mean, I'm a paper person. Believe me, I'm a self-proclaimed paper person. But if I'm typing my ideas or whatever, it's going to go on the computer. It's not going to be handwritten.
What do you think about it being taped to the back of the computer, though?
I've done weird things like that, not necessarily notes or stuff, but I've taped things to my computer, especially at work. When I went to work, there was things taped on the back of my passwords or things that I should remember that I don't. And because I'm a paper person, I mean, I would sometimes print it out, cut it out, tape it somewhere or whatever. So, I mean, I didn't find that weird. The ramblings may be weird, but just taped up somewhere, not weird.
Yeah, the ramblings are super weird, and there are a couple of websites that have them kind of typed out based off of, seeing them, so you can go take a look. There's a bunch of stuff there that's kind of weird. But at the same time, kind of the way that it was all mapped out and kind of put on the back of the computer, it was protected. To me, it kind of stood out like, everything else she said he would just write down anywhere he had, a place to write it. So that stood out.
How long was it there? That would be my question.
Yeah, and it was odd because in the show they had mentioned, Allison had mentioned something about it had to be that same day because she still found clippings in the trash can. So are you telling me that you guys took out the trash every single day, or?
Yeah, that's the whole.
So I want to also make sure to mention, and I know that we're running a little bit long, but I also want to make sure to mention that right before Ray's passing, Allison and Ray were looking to move back to LA. Right? So they were looking to go back to LA, and actually, in the research I found, at the time of Ray's passing, he wasn't fully employed with Porter and Stansberry. He had actually left 6 months beforehand. So all of that to say, there's quite a few theories that came out with all of this. The show, I think, alluded to it's still unsolved. They didn't know, if it was suicide, if it was foul play. The, the autopsy report, there was no, foul play, anything like that. Even the toxicology report came out that there was only a little bit of alcohol in his system only, and that could have been from how long he was, decomposing for, because it took so long to find him. So what are some theories that you guys came across when you were looking into this?
We didn't mention this, but in the Netflix show, a couple of weeks, I think, before all this happened, the alarms went off at the house. Twice. And he was so afraid someone was breaking in. So that's where my theory starts, is he's in some trouble. Whether it's through Porter and his company, I don't know. Whether it's with Claudia and whoever that is, I don't know. But this man is in some trouble. He doesn't know how to handle this trouble. Maybe he was in debt. Maybe he was in gambling debt. Maybe, we don't know. And he got a phone call. We're going to come after you. We're going to come after your wife. We're going to come after your Claudia, whatever. We don't know. oh crap, I'm gonna get out of here and I'm gonna go handle this. He went, parked, met up with this person beat him up. He don't want to go home and face his wife. Boom, boom, bam, it's done. That's my theory. And Claudia had something to do with it.
Claudia, freaking Claudia. What about you, investigator Skylar?
So, I've been very talkative about some web pages throughout this episode. I mean, I've done quite a bit of research in the short amount of time that we've been talking about it, even here now. And I think it goes back to whenever his house alarms were going off. So if you read on some of the web pages, it is said that Ray actually voluntarily left the Stansbury research 6 months before any of this happened, right? So when you think about somebody who's going through mental illness, or what leads to a psychotic break, there's been rumors that say that Ray found something out about Porter's company that he was just not supposed to know, and that kind of put it into his head that people were then after him for knowing that information. Now, granted, if somebody was really after him or not, we'll never know. But when you add that kind of anxiety to somebody who already suffers from mental illness, it's going to gradually get worse and worse and worse to the point of anything could happen. I mean, your fight or flight is going to enable, and he could have ran and jumped off this building, right? But there's so many theories that go around the hole itself and how he actually died. Do I believe that he woke up that morning, got that phone call or whatever, and intended to kill himself? No, that's not what I believe. But did it send him into a spiraling mental break that resulted in him killing himself? Yes, I do believe that. Now, the hole you mentioned earlier, Kayla, was only about a 40-inch diameter, which 40 inches is not that big. A 6'5" man falling through a 40-inch hole, I mean, you got to be pretty unlucky to fall through that hole, right? But there's two theories that I go off of when it comes to the hole. So one was that when he jumped off of the actual hotel and landed on the roof, the hole wasn't necessarily completely gone, that his body hitting that roof, and being that the room that he fell in used to be a pool, had so much humidity in the air, and I mean, it was an older building as well, that his weight actually caused the hole to go fully in, and that's why he fell. So if he fell face flat, his body's there, and the hole cracked through, he would have landed on half of his body, which would result in only half of his body having the injuries, and then dying, succumbing to those injuries within those 8 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you saying you think he landed on the roof and then it came
I'm
through? Because
thinking,
my theory was he just went through the roof.
no. My theory is that the roof already had some probably humidity issues because it used to be a pool. It had probably a leak, maybe a water leak or whatever, and that him hitting that roof caused the hole. His weight hitting the roof that already was weak. I mean, 260 pounds, and from that height, you're going to be going at, quite a speed, hitting that roof, then caused the initial hole, and his body basically succumbed to that hole and landed on his left side, which caused all of those left side injuries.
Yeah. I could see it.
But, was there fishy stuff going on? There probably was. I mean, he found, they say that he found something out about the Porter Stansbury company that he shouldn't have known, because if you look into that deeper, that company actually was ordered to pay back $1.5 million on a settlement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that company in itself had some fishy stuff going on.
And they also had ties to the Russians and the Russian mob, too.
It's always the Russians. Always the
Russians. So Ashley, did you have any thoughts on this case?
No.
She's like, no.
I love listening to it. I'm learning.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead and just kind of throw mine out there. He had a psychotic break. You know, it anything to deal with finances is usually going to put a strain on somebody. I do think that there was some foul play. I think that something happened to that night. He went to go try to figure, because he rented a studio. He was doing investigations on, like what was going on at Porter Stansbury, in regards to like the Freemasons, in regards to the Russians, whatever it was. He was looking for something to write a story on. And so I think he was exactly in the wrong place, the wrong time. He got a call to go somewhere, saw something he shouldn't have. Did he get hit by a car? Did he get beat with some bats beforehand? Maybe. But I think in the end, he thought that the best way to protect his wife and protect his family was to, just not be here anymore. If I'm not here, they don't have anything to go after. And I find it very, very odd that if he left freely 6 months before his passing, that Agora still owed him $80,000 in expenses, which later comes out in research. Allison took her 10 years to pay off $90,000 worth of debt that Ray had, and 80,000 of that was due to buying equipment and paying the upfront cost in the promise that he would get expenses paid. However, I think, when it comes to finances, it just makes things hard. So I definitely think in this case, it was unfortunately suicide. Whether it was, purpose or, just a spur of the moment or something happened, we don't know. So I want to end this. I want to make sure, do you guys have any other thoughts first?
I mean, I could probably talk for like another 30 minutes, but my wife would be mad, so.
Yeah, my daughter's yelling at me. I don't know if you hear.
I think I just want to sign off with saying, I think it was the detective. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Excuse me. Murder, motive, money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This was a good case because we don't know, and we will never know what happened. There's just you don't know people's minds, you don't know people's thoughts. And with that said, if you need to talk to somebody, friend, family, stranger, just do it.
Yeah, definitely. Just talk to people, especially, even if you feel like today it's not okay to be it is okay not to be okay. Trying to say
okay to be okay.
Okay not to be okay. It happens to everybody, and we're all crazy in our own way. So with that, let us know what you guys think. Do you think it was suicide? Do you think there was foul play? Do you think this is really still an unsolved mystery? Also, make sure to comment, like, subscribe. Let us know, what should we do next? What other cases are still, unsolved? What other murders or mysteries should we take a look at? We have the Murder and Mystery Hub.
See ya.